have in the house? Safeguard and friends. Well, the importance of proper health and hygiene practices is important to every human being, and this is to prevent diseases in body and have home environment. With us in the studio this morning, we've got someone we've just been talking to and called Dr. Safeguard. She is a registered medical practitioner and she works with Safeguard. She's Dr. Nkechi Olalere. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise.
Good morning, thanks
and
for
sitting
having me.
next to him is Dr. Charles Iwala, who's consultant. Good morning to her. And I think it's because I was going to talk about Dr. Charles Iwala, who is a consultant obstetrician and gynecologist. You're part of the Friends of Safeguard?
Sure.
Okay. And then we've got a certified dental surgeon as well, Dr. Onyinye Ome. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise.
Also a friend of Safeguard.
A friend of Safeguard, yes. Okay. Now, let me go straight to the point. Dr. Nkechi Olalere, what is Safeguard?
Okay.
What's it about?
Safeguard is an antibacterial soap, and essentially, Safeguard is leading the campaign for hygiene. When we say hygiene, people think, this is so commonplace. Everybody should know about hygiene. Everybody should know about washing their hands, the right things to do. But it is so commonplace, and yet people actually don't practice it. So Safeguard is really, as a brand, stands for ensuring that everything about hygiene is brought back to the fore. We have found out over time, a lot of scientists did some studies and they found out that long before a lot of those illnesses we used to have before were eradicated, a lot of times we think it's because of the immunizations and the antibiotics that came out, but actually these diseases were eradicated long before these things came out, and it was found out that more often than not it was actually traced to good sanitation and good nutrition. And so that's what Safeguard is bringing to the fore again. So it's hygiene in different places.
So is it a case of you manufactured a soap that you're telling Nigerians to now begin to use to wash their hands regularly?
Okay. Safeguard soap is manufactured by Procter & Gamble, so it is a product.
Okay.
But what this campaign here is, and that's why you have medical practitioners here talking about it, is really to tell you about hygiene, because that's what the Safeguard brand has positioned itself to be. It's called the champion of family health. So it's everything about health. World Health Organization has found out that hygiene is one of the commonest things that you can do to actually maintain health. It's so commonplace, wash your hands before you eat, before you touch food and all that. So that's what the Safeguard brand represents, hygiene at the very common level, at the very high level.
Okay, let me ask Dr. Charles Iwala. There is this assumption that a number of diseases like pneumonia, diarrhea, and so on, they are preventable if you are following whatever the preachings or campaigns of Safeguard is. How true is that?
Well, that's very true. We know that the environment is riddled with lots of bugs, bacteria, viruses, fungi, which I'll call generally as bugs. Quite a lot of them can be transmitted from the environment via physical media like our hands to our bodies. There are also other media that we can get them via, even if we're not using our hands, for instance. By proper personal hygiene, you wash properly your hands, your entire body, you can actually reduce many of the bacteria, the fungus, and all of that get onto your skin before they are able to secure a foothold and cause disease. Because the mere presence on your skin or on your body surface does not necessarily mean you have an infection. Some processes will still go on before an infection is established.
Okay. Dr. Ome, you're a dental surgeon.
Yes.
And you're a friend of Safeguard. How so?
Okay, because I'm here to support her campaign to promote hygiene practices.
Okay. How do good hygiene practices result in me having good dentition and good teeth?
Okay, there are a lot of oral hygiene practices that you can practice and make sure that you're free from infection and diseases, which is common, but a lot of people actually don't practice, and when they do practice, they don't practice very well.
So what will be the practice? What will be the things that you do? that forms
To
part of
maintain-
that practice?
Regular toothbrushing. Regular everyday toothbrushing. We all know that we should brush our teeth
Once, twice,
2
three
times every day.
twice.
But the time, most people brush before breakfast in the mornings, which shouldn't be. You should brush after breakfast in the mornings. And the very last thing before you go to bed.
Dr. Ome, I should wake up and eat with my smelly mouth and then go clean my teeth thereafter?
If you brush before you go to
Absolutely.
bed, you are going to wake up in the morning with a fresh mouth. The reason why we all wake up in the morning with a mouth not so fresh is because we don't brush at night before we go to bed. So all the food we eat at night, the bacteria actually act on them, ferment them, and then you come out with partially decomposed food debris in your mouth, and then you wake up with a
Decomposed?
Yes.
Dr. Ome, even when you brush your teeth at night before you go to bed, because you have not used you haven't spoken in what, 7-8 hours because you're asleep, you wake up in the morning and you're still, your mouth is still funky.
If you brush before you have your breakfast, then you have to brush after breakfast before you go out in the day.
Or at least rinse your mouth.
No, you brush. That
Oh.
is the ideal practice. You brush before you go out in the
Okay.
day so that you have a fresh breath
Okay.
for the course of the day.
Lessons in hygiene.
Okay.
Very good. So you brush at night and then you brush after your breakfast.
Yes.
And if you insist on brushing before breakfast, you have to brush again after breakfast.
Absolutely. That's why you have the
Interesting.
practice of breakfast in bed. It assumes that you've actually brushed the night before. So you have breakfast in bed, and then after that you go brush.
Ah,
So,
okay. Now let's talk about general hygiene.
Absolutely.
What would you advise us to do to make sure that we are not, well, let me just use the word fodder for all these bugs that he spoke about earlier?
Okay.
What are the most important things that
Things
we
to
should
do.
do to prevent ourselves
Okay,
from
so
being...
there are actually 4 specific parts of hygiene that we always talk about. So there's personal hygiene, and that talks to waking up in the morning, taking a bath, washing our hands every time before we eat, before we, carry young children, even brushing our teeth, like she has also said. Then there's also food hygiene, which is not something that we think about. For instance, somebody goes to the market, you have your shopping bag, you buy fish, you drop it inside. Then you buy gari, you drop it inside. Then you buy meat, you put it right on top of that. Now that's food contamination, because essentially by the time you make that eba, or let's even say you buy something like fruits, vegetables, which you're actually not going to cook, you've actually contaminated that. And things like chicken, which actually have salmonella, the one that usually causes the typhoid that we talk about, can very easily contaminate that food. So that again is hygiene practice for food, even in the kitchen, to make sure that you separate the things that you use for those things. Then there's pet hygiene for people who have pets, dogs and all that. Make sure that after you've handled the pets, before you go and prepare food, especially for children, before you eat your food, make sure you wash your hands. Make sure that after you've touched the dog litter or anything, you wash your hands. Then there's also hygiene in the home.
Dog litter?
Somebody has to
somebody's got to
trash that
do it.
stuff. Yeah.
You don't have to touch it.
Yeah, but even when you carry just the can or whatever it is they've done, they've done it in, you still have to wash your hands. Then there's also hygiene in the home. So that's about cleaning the home. That's about making sure that your home is clean and tidy. Washing your toilet. A lot of times you see the cleaners, when they're washing the toilet, they're actually just transferring germs from one place to the other. So we have to supervise all these things and make sure that hygiene is actually, they're actually doing these things hygienically. So it's in every aspect of our lives. One thing I would like to touch on, if we have a bit of time, is actually the proper way of washing your hands, because we keep talking about hand washing, but there are proper ways of doing this.
Which seems to be very important in the scheme of things.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
how is that done?
How is the correct way to wash your
So there
hands?
are actually like 5 steps for proper hand washing. So the first thing is you wet your hands and then you apply the soap. And then you lather your hands continually, and the focus here is to make sure that you're rubbing in between your fingers, you're scrubbing the back of your hands, and of course you're touching your nail beds, making sure that you're bringing out all the stuff inside there. Now you're supposed to continue doing this for about 15 to 20 seconds. Most people would say the time it takes to sing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or Happy Birthday to You twice. Usually you would have done that. Then you rinse under running water for another 10 seconds. And we usually advocate that you wipe off your hands with a paper tissue, and then you use that same tissue to turn off the tap. Now, I know you're going to tell me that usually we don't have ideal conditions, running water and all that. And I always say you can improvise, even if it's pure water or bottled water, whatever it is. Just make sure somebody's pouring it over your hands, and then you can still observe the same protocol.
Interesting. So you were going to ask a question?
Yes,
Okay,
I
go
want
ahead.
to ask Dr. Iwala. So in all of this, of course, you're saying, if possible, wash your hands with safeguard. Isn't that the message?
Yes.
Okay. So where do we get Safeguard? How available is it? Is it readily available on the street corner?
Yes, Safeguard is very widely available in most pharmacy shops, in most retail supermarket shops, and I think they are also very affordable.